Hello everybody, welcome back. This is Sophilautia here, and today I wanted to record a video showing everybody the process of basically how to create a board from scratch and how to upload it, and basically everything involved in that process. I know a lot of people get confused with all of this, so hopefully this guide can maybe help you out. Yeah, so I'm going to be kind of winging this, so we'll see how we go. So as you see here, this is our community maps repository at fortunestreetmodding.github.io/maps. I'll have a link in the description. And this has all of the maps that we have uploaded to our repository. A lot of these are also included in Custom Street World Tour, but not all of them for certain reasons. But yeah, if you would like to have a board included in this list or possibly included in Custom Street World Tour, then yeah, stay tuned to this video because we're gonna show you exactly how to do that. So the first thing you want to decide on is a concept for your board. Maybe you'll have like a specific design idea in mind, or you just have a general idea of a theme. It can really, the inspiration can come from anywhere you want. But for me, just speaking of my process personally, I love to start with the theme first and kind of work backwards from there. So a theme I was thinking of is I was listening to this pretty funky Siva Gunner rip of Lucky Channel from Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And I thought, man, okay, why don't we use this as a concept for a board? I don't know. I thought it was something weird for this video, and that's where I'm going to start. So now that I have my idea, the first thing I want to do is create a folder for the board. So this can be anywhere you want, but I'm just going to put it here, and we're going to call it Lucky. Now this is the internal name for the board. It's not what it's going to be called in game, but some short name that's easy to remember would be good. And a very important thing is the folder and all files in the folder can't have any spaces, or that's going to cause problems. So we've got that folder there, and now we need to start making a map. So I'm going to bring up Fortune Avenue. So if you don't know Fortune Avenue, that's the software that we're using for creating maps, and you can find it on github.com/fortunestreetmodding, which I'll have linked to the description. We just go to Fortune Avenue Qt here, and under releases, we can find the latest release here. And then we're just going to download either the Mac or Windows version and get that set up. So now that's organized, let's open up Fortune Avenue. So this here is Fortune Avenue. This is the interface we're going to be using for creating boards. So first up, we're going to click File, and we're going to click New. And so it's going to start us off with square 0, which is a bank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control+E, and that's going to create new spaces for us so we can move around. And we just start building a board like this. This is going to take a second, so I'm just going to skip ahead to when I'm done. So when I thought of the concept for this board, I thought, let's make it about money. So I did kind of like a $ in a box sort of shape. So this is the basic shape for our board. Now, at presently, none of these spaces are actually linked. You'll see in the top right, this is the waypoints, which determine how the spaces are connected. But a cool thing we can do to save a lot of time is we can click this tools thing here, and we can go auto path. There's also advanced auto path. I might explain that briefly. So basically, with advanced auto path, the way it works is we have these arrows here. And by default, it's going to connect every path to every square to every adjacent square. But if you wanted, you could kind of manipulate that a little bit. So for example, if I didn't want you to be able to travel from 54 to 10 from 13, then I would click on 13, and then I click the green arrow, which is where it's coming from, 54 to the left. And then I'm going to disallow all and only allow going to the right. So when I hit auto path, that's what it will do. I'm not going to do that today, but I just wanted to show you a basic idea how the advanced auto pathing works if you want to play with that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to turn off advanced auto path. I'm just going to use the regular auto path right now. And bingo, now the entire map is pathed. But we do have one problem, and that's down here. This is very important, right? The possible paths is 146 from square 9. That means a crash is possible. This is a calculation the game does basically whenever you roll a dice. And if the number it calculates is too high from a certain square, the game will either stutter or crash. And so this is identified that on square 9, at least square 9, it might be other squares too, there's too many possible paths from this destination, and it's too complicated. So a crash is very likely. So to fix that, we need to limit the pathing a little bit. So this is where we start manipulating the waypoints a little bit more specifically. So I was thinking, for good balance, it's generally a good idea. Like, this isn't a hard rule. There are definitely boards that go against this rule. But as a general rule, you generally don't want people to be able to loop around the bank very quickly in succession, because then they'll be able to start hoarding stocks very quickly. If that's something you don't want, then you can limit that by making it harder to get back to the bank once you've left. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to make it so if you're traveling from 9 and going up to 6, you can't go back to 5. So we see here with space 6 selected, we have the waypoints here. So waypoint 3 start is 9. So that means coming from 9, it can go to these 3 destinations, 5, 7, and 10. And we want to change that. We don't want it to be able to go to 5. So what we're going to do is we're just going to change the 5 to 255. 255 is the null value. So that means that waypoint isn't counted. So yeah, if you ever want to get rid of any of these, just change it to 255. And we also want to make sure that you can't go from 5 to 9. So we'll get rid of that one too. And we'll do the same on the other end. So you can't go from 27 to 29. And you can't go from 29 to 27. And as you'll see, the possible paths has reduced dramatically. It is now 67, and that is okay. The game will tell you if the amount of possible paths is too high or not. I think it's if it's above 70, you start getting problems. So we're just good now. So I think that is looking pretty good. So at this point, you're going to want to start filling up the board with spaces. And there's all different kinds of spaces you can pick. The main one you want to focus on first is getting your suits in. Now, it is possible to have a board without suits, but we usually don't recommend it because, like, being able to promote is a key part of the gameplay. But yeah, like, you want to make sure, generally speaking, that there is a decent promotion loop that is, practical to players. And you want to make sure, well, there's all different philosophies to designing a board, right? But I guess you want to make sure there aren't sections of the boards that people have no reason to go to. Sometimes it's okay to have sections like that, but generally speaking, you want to have some sort of incentive to go everywhere on the board, right? So keep that in mind. So we can put down those suits. If we want, we can put down change a suit spaces, which every time someone passes them, the suit will change what it is. That's another way to handle things. Obviously, properties are self-explanatory. You can select the shop preset if you want, and that'll fill in the shop prices for you, or you can adjust the values manually if you want. You can even make the value of the shop and the price of stopping at the shop like wildly different than normal. Most people usually leave this as default, but if you want to play around, you can make some pretty silly stuff. And also you need to set your districts and stuff. What else have we got? So you can also make arcades, for example. So on this board, since we're basing it off Lucky Channel, I'm going to have a lot of arcades. Usually most boards won't have this many arcades, but I'm going to be a bit creative. Another one that's good to have is take a break squares. You land on them and all your shops close. It's good to have some balance. And you can also make, for example, boon squares, which will give you I think it's 20% commission on other people's sales for that turn. Or a boom square, which gives you a 50% commission. What else we got? We got stockbrokers. By landing on these, you'll be able to purchase stocks like you would at the bank, but you have to land on it. You can't just pass it like you would a bank. And on that note, it is possible to have more than one bank. And they will function the same as the Sport Bank. So if, for example, you want to give people more opportunities to purchase stocks or cash in their suits for a promotion, you can do that. Another one you can chuck in is the roll-on squares. They'll just let you roll again. The switches are particularly interesting because you can really change up the board with these. Basically, by landing on a switch, it will change the state of the board. You can have a board that has 2 states or a board that has 4 states if you want. And the way it works is basically you'll need to create more of these FRB files, which are these files. If we save this, it saves as an FRB. It's like the board file. And you need to make 4 separate FRBs that have roughly the same structure. Generally, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a board, and then if you want to make a second state, save a copy of it, and start moving the spaces around. You can move them any way you want. Generally speaking, you can't change the values of properties, but you can change some parameters. Like you can change the destinations of backstreets, and you can... What else? I believe you can change event spaces too, which is another thing. This event spaces actually weren't included in the base game. This is an addition we've added. So basically what it does, it'll trigger a certain venture card effect based on the destination ID of the space. So if I put in 56, for example, it will trigger the effects of venture card 56. And this opens up a lot of possibilities for board making. And like I was saying, if you use a switch to change the board state, you can actually change what these event spaces do by changing the ID here. So yeah, it's a little trick that people can use for creative board ideas. What else? There's magmalices, which you'll want the lift magmalis start and then connecting it to another magmalis space. And you can also do Yoshi lifts the same way. Can be a little bit buggy though, in my experience. I think it depends on what kind of background you pick, because not all backgrounds support magmalices. By default, magmalices are supported on Mount Magmageddon, and you otherwise need a special kind of background to use it. In particular, BG009 Alt, the background we've made, that does support magmalices, so you can use them on that as well. What else? So backstreets are the warps. You just set the ID of the space you want it to warp to. So I can punch in 13 there, and when you land on that, it'll warp you to space 13. Keep in mind, if you go removing spaces, the numbers of the spaces can change. So you'll want to make sure that the ID of your backstreets is up to date if you go changing the number of spaces on the board. It's a good thing to keep in mind, because I've made that mistake many times. There's a cannon. So if you land on the cannon, it will shoot you to any other player of your choice. So it gives you a little bit of choice of where to land, but nothing too broken. There's also one-way alley doors. I guess I should explain how these work, even though I'm not going to be using them in my board. So I'll make a second property right here. Let's set that back to 0. Did I do that right? No, I didn't. Let's try that again. There we go. All right. So if I want to set a door, there's a couple of ways you can do it. But that's a backstreet. We want a one-way alley door. Keep in mind these will change appearance based on whether you're playing with the Mario theme or the Dragon Quest theme. So let's say I want a door which connects from here to here. I could make a 2-way door if I want, and then I just need to connect the waypoints up. You'll need to do this manually because auto-pathing won't do it for you. We'll go. So we need to add 55. So each of these can go to 55, and 55 can go to each of these. Then we click on this one. 12 goes from 55 this square to 56 the square on the other end. And we want to make it 2-way, so it goes both ways. So 55 goes to 49, 49 goes to 55, and we just chuck in 56, 56, 56, 50, 48. And there we go. So that's all set up now. And now there is a trick I can show you guys, which you should absolutely be doing when you're testing the pathing of your boards. You want to make sure that every path in the board works correctly. And people screw up on doors a lot. I've seen this happen a lot, so it's definitely good to test them. What you could do is if you click a square and hold down Control and click an adjacent square, you could do a few things with this. So if you hold down Control and press 1, see that? It's moving. I'm going to keep pressing Control 1. And what that's doing is that is selecting the first waypoint destination on each square. You can even hold it down and it'll keep going. If you do Control and 2, it'll select the second waypoint destination and you can start going in different directions. And if you do 3, you can do the third waypoint destination. So what I want to do is, can I get around here? Yep. So it works in that direction. And it works in that direction. So the door's working. And yeah, you really want to make sure that every path in your board is working. So it could take a bit of trial and error, but this is a great way to do it. Just like testing all these routes, making sure every possible direction is accounted for and that every path works as intended. So yeah, that's a really cool feature you could use. Also, I didn't mention, but another way you can connect spaces is by selecting 2 of them with Control and using these buttons here. You can connect them one way or another or connect bidirectionally. Now, this is definitely a simple way to do things, but it basically auto sets the waypoints for you. And it can sometimes do things you don't want it to do, like connecting spaces that you don't want to be connected. So if you want full control over what your waypoints are doing, it's definitely best to input the numbers manually for now. But just as a quick and easy solution to connect 2 spaces quite simply, you can do that as well. So yeah, keep that in mind. And so, yeah. So that's, oh yeah, also, you can make one-way doors too. And the way you do that is you can just place down one of these one-way alley exits. Where is that? There it is. That's basically going to work the same way, though we change the waypoints to make it so you can't go from 49 to 46. Because that won't work. Like, you just can't go on this and go back through. That's not the way it works. Even though Fortune Avenue is saying you can right now, in-game it won't work. But yeah, you need to adjust the waypoints just to make sure that doesn't get screwy or anything. So yeah, that's definitely another option. There's lots of crazy stuff you can do with doors. But there is a caveat to it. If you use too many doors, you can cause the game to crash. So this is very important to be aware of. And it depends on the dice roll. So here's basically the rules that we figured out. If your max dice roll is 9 and you roll a 9, if you go through any door, the game is going to be at risk of crashing. So our rule is no doors if your board has a 9 max dice roll. If the max dice roll is 8 or 7 and you roll that, if you go through 2 doors in one roll, the game is likely to crash. So if you keep your doors far enough that you can't roll a 7 or 8 and get through 2 of them at once, so like if I, for example, put a second door over here and just like made it so go through this one and then go through that one. If I'm rolling anything higher than a 6, that's going to cause problems. So don't do that. And I think it's if you're rolling a 6 and you go through 3 doors at once, the game can crash as well. So generally, yeah, just avoid going through any situation where doors are like packed closely together like that, especially if you have a high roll. Just a good thing to keep in mind. So now's the point where we're going to start creating shops and districts. So basically, you want to make sure that you have no more than 12 districts, and you want between 3 and 6 shops per district. Generally, 4 to 6 shops per district is recommended. I think you can technically have 7 shops in a district, but it will start getting a bit glitchy and won't display properly on in-game. But it should technically work. But I'd recommend sticking to 4 to 6 if possible. As for how to price the shops, it's entirely up to you. But a good cheat if you want to make sure your game is balanced is to go and use the district simulator, which you can find in the help menu here. So let's click on that, and that's going to take us here. And so this is a really cool tool you can use to basically, generate districts for you. So for example, if I want a 4-shop district, I'll configure it down here, and we'll have a target stock value of 10. As a rule of thumb, when I'm designing my boards, I want to make sure that the districts that are closest to the bank are kind of like lower in value compared to the districts that are further from the bank. So we're going to click randomize. You've got a few different options here. You can buy as high or lower prices, allow duplicates or whatever. I'm just going to leave that default and click randomize. That's going to give me a bunch of different values that I can plug in to a district. If I want to make it higher, if I want to do like a 6 shop district, if I'm aiming for 20 G stock value, and we're going to make it minimum 300, maximum 900, make it big numbers. Click that, and it will print that out for us. So you can plug those values into Fortune Avenue as you like. And so this is going to take a little bit of time. So I'm just going to skip ahead to one I have already prepared. So here we go. So this is the one I've done. I've got a bunch of districts here, district there, district there, district there, 4 districts around the edges, and a district here. And I've adjusted the prices of the shops accordingly using the district simulator. You'll notice probably that the values of these shops are quite high. That's the theme I'm going for this board, is I want it to be like high value, high risk, high reward. It's all about getting lucky. So that's the theme of the board I've chosen. And I've kind of adjusted the values here to match. So I'm giving the players 3,000 initial cash, 300 base salary, and 200 salary increment, which is pretty high. If I want to test the board later and I find these values are still too low, I can adjust them as I want. And I chose a max dice roll of 7 because the board's pretty compact. 6 is going to be for your smaller boards, 8 and 9 for your really big boards. I thought a nice middle ground would be 7 for this one. I think it works pretty well. And I forgot to mention, but you can also set looping boards as well. If you want like a board like Good Day Galaxy that loops around the stage, you can do that. There's the looping mode parameters you can set here, but you also need to do some setting in the YAML. And I did forget to mention, so there is a snap function, which is on by default, but you can turn it off and you can like move your spaces anywhere you want. I think generally people like to have some kind of snap so it all looks good, but you can be creative. You can make some weird shapes if you want it. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. And of course you can adjust the snap value too. So if I set it to 8, then it's smaller increments there and I have more room to adjust. So yeah, a few more tools that you might be worth mentioning are, it's a verify board tool, which is going to tell you if there's any potential problems with the board. Sometimes it has some false flags, but generally it's a good thing to check for possible problems. So much surf depth, you probably don't need to worry about that too much. So auto-assign shop models is a good one. If for whatever reason you've set the prices of your shop, but you didn't set the local shop, the load shop presets or the shop models, so that's something that's going to be pretty apparent when you bid up your board, is none of the shops will have names or anything. And it can look a bit weird. So if you've forgotten to do that, a cool thing to do is you can do auto assign shop models. This is a really cool tool that's been added in the latest version. You can set the shop model to the closest value of what you've specified for the shop, or you can make it completely random if you don't. You can prevent duplicates, so every shop is unique. And you can also allow it to readjust the shop values if you want. We're probably not going to use that for our purposes. Oh yeah, going back a second, there was one thing I forgot to mention. Boards can only have a maximum of 85 spaces. So counting 0, that's going to go up to the number 84. If you have any more than that, things start getting really glitchy and the potential of crashing gets very high. So keep it under 85. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention this, but if you are removing any of these waypoint destinations or anything and changing it to 255, I just recommend selecting everything and going sort all waypoints. And that's just going to sort them all out so that the 255 is at the end, just to make everything a little bit cleaner. Good thing to do when you finish doing your waypoints. Oh, there is one thing I forgot, and I always forget this, and I really want to stress that don't forget this. It's important. We're going to open up lucky.frb again, and we're going to click screenshot. And this is basically creating a screenshot of the board, which will then be used to display it on our repo website. And you want to make sure if you have multiple states of the boards, you're grabbing them in here and chucking them in these slots and checking those boxes and printing them all out as WebP files. So I just got the one, so I'm going to do that. And that's going to create a screenshot. Yep, here we go. So it's going to create a nice screenshot of the board for us, which we'll display on the repo. Very important step. Make sure you don't forget this like I always do. So yeah, that's the basic rundown of Fortune Avenue. So we're pretty happy with this. So I'm going to click save. We're going to save this Lucky, which I've already done, but we'll leave it there. Yeah, and now if I wanted to create more states of the board, then I would make a copy of this and start moving spaces around, save as a new state, and then play with that as I wish. So yeah, so I'm going to get out of this now. I won't save my changes there. And we're going to grab the board I just made, and we're going to chuck that in the folder. And so now, what you need next is a YAML file. And this is going to be the text file, which basically sets all the parameters for the board that aren't specified in the FRB file. Thankfully, I have a template for this, and I'm going to include a link in the description for this as well. But we're just going to copy this template YAML here, and we're going to rename that to... Going to rename that to Lucky. And then we're going to open that up. And you can open this in any sort of text editor of your choice. You can use Notepad++ as a very popular one. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. And so this is what it looks like. We got, and we need to start filling this out, right? So what's the name of the board? We're going to be calling it Lucky Channel. Maybe even Lucky Zone. I was also thinking Lucky Zone. Go with Lucky Channel. No. Zone. I changed my mind. And you've got a bunch of languages which you can set to, because Boom Street will change language depending on the language you've got set for the system or the emulator. I'm not going to bother with any of that because I don't speak these languages, so I'm going to leave these out. And we also need a description. So we'll put down... I don't know. Now's your chance to get lucky. I don't know. Now, I see a thing a lot of people do. They'll kind of mimic the format of the vanilla boards, which it'll be like Yoshi's Island, : and it'll have like the quotation marks and stuff. I'm just going to say we don't really do that here. And we've even removed them from, the boards that we've put on the repo. So now it's just plain text, and I think it looks a lot better that way. Then you need to set your rule set, standard or easy. We definitely preference standard mode here, so for the themes, I find if you can't decide, Dragon Quest is usually the good bet. I think Mario theme tends to have some compatibility issues with some stuff, and yeah, I just generally think Dragon Quest is usually better. We'll go with that. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference on this board. The main thing it's going to be affecting is like your warps and your back streets and your one-way doors and that kind of thing. And also certain aspects like magmalices, I think. They won't appear in a Mario-themed board. So we need to set the initial cache and target amount and base salary and all that, which you may remember was specified in the FRB. But unfortunately, because of the way the game reads the data, it kind of depends on which mode you're playing as to where it's going to grab this information from. So you do need to enter it on both. So we're just going to grab these values. So 3,000 initial cash and 300 base salary. There. 200 salary increment. And we also need to specify a target amount, which is something which isn't specified in the FRB. Let's go with... Nah, let's just go 30,000. Max dice roll 7. And so for the FRB files, these are for the different states of the board. So if you have a 2-state board, you'll need to specify the FRB files here, or a 4-state, you'll need to specify all of them. Since we're not using those states, I'm going to remove them. But, big but here, there is a little caveat. If you are... I'm just going to bring up the backgrounds menu here. So this is our list of backgrounds on our GitHub website, which you can look at. This is a very good reference point for deciding what background you want to use. Now, if you decide for whatever reason you want to use, which one was it? The Observatory, BG109. if you don't use all 4 states of the board, you're going to get a visual glitch where a golden train is going to appear on the middle of the map and it won't go away. And the way to fix that is to simply go into your YAML and make sure all states are pointing to the same thing. So we'll just put in our FRB file is called Lucky. So we're just going to put all that there. I forgot to mention, but we do have custom backgrounds, which you can choose from here. Some of them are 2D, some of them are 3D. As of yet, 2D backgrounds don't seem to work on the Wii console. So I would avoid those if you want to play on Wii. But otherwise, all these should be fine. So for the background I'm picking for this one, I'm going to be using a custom background this time. So I'm going to be using BG009 Alt. And because that's not the one I was talking about, we're going to get rid of these extra states. They're not really needed. But yeah, so BG009 Alt is a version of BG009, which is, was that Good Egg Galaxy? But we have like all of the innards removed. So it's just the skybox basically. And I think it looks really cool. I use it for a lot of my boards. So I'm going to be using that today. And what you need to do is you're going to need to download the files. And you're going to need to grab this zip and where is that? We're going to chuck the contents of that into here. And then we just need to reference it in the YAML. BG009 alt. Basically, make sure you have the files for the background in the folder. So just to be clear, that includes the compress file, the scene file, and the 3 UI menu files for the background. These ones are just basically showing little snippets of the background when you're in the deciding turn order screen. So yeah, we're going to be doing that today with the custom background, and we also need a map icon. And before we get into that, I just want to say, if you want to make a custom background, that is absolutely something you can do, but it is a much more involved process that I'm willing to get into in this video. So we might save that for another time. Be sure to check our information on our Discord. We have a lot of resources to help people who want to make custom backgrounds and upload them to the repo too. So yeah, we'll be happy to help you out, but I'm not going to go into it in this video. So we need a map icon now. And to do that, we're going to need to do a bit of photoshopping. I'm going to use Affinity Photo here. It's not a free program, so you can use GIMP if you want. That's another option. But we have this template file, which I'm going to be linking in the description as well. And you can use this to create your icon. So for this background, I'm just grabbing a stock image of a slot machine. Just going to chuck it in there, line it up, and then I'm going to chuck it in this mask here. There we go. There we go. So as you can see, I've made this icon here, and I've chucked the image, called it lucky.png, and I've chucked it in here. Okay, so now that we have our map icon name, we're going to put that in the YAML. And the next thing we need to decide on is music. Now, it's perfectly fine if you don't want to include music in your board. If you're using a default background, it'll grab the music from that background. Otherwise, it will grab Mario Circuit by default. So if you want custom music for your board, there's a few ways you can go about it. So one thing you can do is you can go to smashcustommusic.net, which is a great website that hosts a large variety of BRSTM files from, all sorts of games. For example, we could just go to Muramasa Rebirth and grab this song. You can preview it by clicking here if you want. And we just click download BRSTM, and we can chuck that straight in the folder ready to go. I'm not going to do that today because I have a specific track I want to put in my board. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So I'm going to start by opening Audacity. Audacity is a free sound editing program you can download for yourself. I won't be providing a link, but it's pretty easy to Google. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in this MP3 file I downloaded earlier. Okay, so we're gonna get this ending here, find a good ending point. All right, so it pretty much just cuts off here. So I want to loop, so I need to cut off right. Looks like the end is there. So I'm gonna cut that off, and then we're gonna go and find a good starting point for the loop. So I reckon right on that beat sounds pretty perfect to me. Yep. So I'm just using a combination of Control and Shift my scroll wheel right now. What looks like the start of the beat? It's kind of hard to see, but that seems pretty good. So now we need to get the sample number. So make sure it says samples down the bottom, and we're going to get this number. We'll write it down on a notepad. 49160. That's going to be the number of the start of the loop, the sample number of the start of the loop. So now that we have all this, we are just going to click export as WAV. Need to make sure it's a WAV file. That's what we need. And then we're going to open another program called Brawlcrate. So if we just type in Brawlcrate into Google, should be the first result, the GitHub link. I'll include a link in the description anyway. But yeah, we want to just grab the latest release from here. So grab that, and then we open it up, and it looks something like this. So what we want to do is we want to click New, and then New BRSTM audio stream. And then when we grab the file we just made. And so it's going to come up like this, right? And now it's very important that if we want it to loop or not, we need to check or uncheck these. Because this is background music for the board, we definitely want it to loop. Otherwise it'll just stop, and that could cause problems. So what we need to do is we need to chuck in that sample we entered earlier for the start of the loop. So 59160, and then let's go to the end and see how it loops. So I'm pretty happy with that. So this song will start from 0 normally, but when you get to the end of the song, it'll start looping from the sample specified here. And since we cut it off perfectly in the WAV file, we don't need to change the end point of the loop. So I reckon that's all good. So I'm going to click OK. That's going to encode that real quick. And then we're going to save this file and put it in our folder. And real quick, we're going to navigate to our board folder, and we'll save it. So we need a simple title, so we'll just do like luckychannel.50.brstm. And you may be wondering why I set it as .50, right? So the .50 is actually setting the volume for the BRSTM file. 50 is your neutral value. Technically, I don't have to put 50. I can just leave it as that, and it'll automatically be 50 by default. But if for example, the volume was a little bit too loud, I could put it down to .30 or .40, and that would lower the volume. If it's really quiet and I want to like double the volume, I'll put it as 100. So yeah, .100. There we go. So just keep that in mind. If you want to adjust the volume of a BRSTM file, you don't need to like manually edit the WAV file and re-import and all that. You can just edit the volume by just changing that little value there. So we're going to put it as, not 5, no. I'm going to put it as 50. There we go. Just make sure we grab that. And we're going to go back to our YAML, and we will put that there for the map volume. luckychannel.50. You don't need the .brstm. Can delete this entire section if required. Yeah, so if you're not using custom music, you can just like, get rid of all that. That's perfectly fine. But we're going to leave that. Now, what do you notice here is there's lots of different options, right? You're not limited to just making new map music. You can also change the music for the stock menu, the venture cards menu, the auction screen, the music that plays when you've met the target, the music that plays when you win and get to the victory screen, the little jingles that play when the guest character appears, when they leave, when you draw the bad venture card, like venture card 13, for example, when you learn to take a break square, when you get promoted, depending on whether you're a Mario character, a Dragon Quest character, or a Mii character. You can set them individually if you want, but most people usually put them as the same thing. The jingle that plays when you force buy out someone, the jingle that plays when you dominate an entire district, and also the jingle that plays when you are bankrupt. So all of these, I think, are non-looping tracks. Yeah, that seems right. So when you're creating your BRSTM, make sure you turn off that loop thing at the top. Otherwise, it'll loop forever and the game will just soft lock. And you don't want that. But yeah, like there's lots of customization for music you can do. And this is really fun to play around with if you're creating a specific theme for your board. But just for the sake of showing off for today, I'm not going to be going into all of these. I'm just going to be making one track today. And we can leave the rest of these blank. Scrolling down, we have tour mode, which is the settings for if you're playing on tour mode. Most of us generally don't touch this stuff because we're more inclined to play multiplayer, but if you care about that, you can mess with that. I think there might be an update coming to CSMM 2, which will allow for more customization of tour mode, so keep an eye out for that. That may be more relevant soon. And the changelog, right? So if it's your first release, you can just put an initial release here. If it's version 2, if we're updating an old version of a map, we can do it like this. We can put changed, added, changed venture card 56 to 34, changed board layout or spaces for better balance. You know, you can put whatever you want here, but that's just a good changelog that's going to display on the website and show people exactly what has been changed each time you update. And of course, you're going to want to put your name, so I'll put Sophilautia, and I'll put my Twitter down. Twitter.com/Sophilautia. And so whenever people see the map, they'll see my name in it and they can click my name and it'll go to my Twitter. So really cool. Also, you can change the district names of boards now. Now, this is quite limited. There is a strict character limit, and if you go, well, it's not really a character limit, more like a pixel width limit, that if you go beyond it, it's going to start looking ugly. So do some trial and error of this if you're going to be playing around with it. Make sure it loads in game and displays fine, because the limit is pretty strict. But yeah, you can name the districts to whatever you want. You can do it in different languages too, but usually I'm going to remove the districts that I'm not fluent in, or the language I'm not fluent in. I can call this the banana district if I want. I don't know. But you can do whatever you want with that. Another little bit of customization. And I'm not going to use that, so I'm going to get rid of it entirely. Unless you're going to, getting rid of that, we'll just use the default district names. And lastly, we got the venture cards here, which is definitely something you can think about a lot, spend a lot of time on, or you can just grab venture cards from another board. It's totally up to you. But there are a few things to keep in mind. Firstly, you need to make sure that the number of venture cards is 64. So every venture card that has a 1 here, that means it's active, 0 means it's inactive. So you can check, just do a Control F, and that will tell us that there are 64 venture cards active. If there's any below or above that number, things start getting weird. So definitely keep it at 64. And there are a few venture cards which can potentially cause problems, so you want to keep an eye out for them. First up is venture card 45. This one will let you warp to a take a break square or an arcade. If you don't have either of these spaces on your board, or one of them is in a place that you don't want a player to be able to get to for whatever reason, this can cause problems for you. In particular, my board doesn't have any take a break squares, so we need to get rid of that right now and replace it with something else. This one, I guess. Another one is 83, which lets you warp to a random location or make everyone else warp to a random location. This is another one that can get pretty hairy for boards that are a little bit more on the complicated side, and you could have people warping places you don't want them to be. So just like keep very vigilant of this venture card. If you don't want people to be able to warp to random places, then get rid of this card. It's going to cause you problems. Venture card 87 makes it so you roll a special all 7s and 8s die. If your max dice roll is below 8, this could potentially screw up your board design, right? If we're talking about stuff like the doors or potential pathing issues. So if you just want to be safe, I recommend turning this off if your max dice roll is below 8. And there's also 115. All players can only move 7 on their turn. Again, same story. If your max dice roll is 6, then maybe turn this one off. And 125, this lets you warp to either a boon square or an arcade. I don't have any boon squares on my board, so I need to make sure this is turned off. And the rest, you can just, you can go through them at your own leisure and adjust them according to your board's balance. Like, just for example, if your board is going to have lots of promotions, a high number of promotions, then you might want to nerf cards that can take advantage of that. And, you know, cards that scale according to your level might become extra powerful. Or not. It's up to you how you want to handle that. But just, yeah, things to keep in mind when you're creating your board, right? So just prepare for CSMM to test the board. I'm going to get rid of this section, but we're going to bring it back later. So right now it's just pulling locally. It's going to grab the lucky channel BRSTM that we grabbed. So I'm going to save that. So when we're ready to test it, we're going to go back to Fortune Street Modding and we're going to download CSMM QT. You can find the latest release here. We're going to download that for Windows or Mac as we like. So this here is what CSMM looks like. And CSMM is what you're going to be using to modify your Boom Street or Fortune Street ISOs to add new maps to them. And maybe do some other stuff too. So what we're going to do is we need to import our WBFS or ISO first. So I'm going to do that. With CSMM, it's important to note that it's recommended that you use a clean ISO whenever doing stuff like this. Using ISOs that have already been modified by CSMM or otherwise can cause problems. It's not guaranteed. I've definitely done it lots of times and been completely fine. But if you are having problems, good idea to use a vanilla ISO where you can. Okay, so this interface here is going to show us all the different boards that are currently loaded into the game. It's all kind of out of order and it's really annoying. But basically, here's what you need to know. So map set is going to determine whether it's appearing in the easy mode menu or the standard mode menu. It's important to note that the map set isn't exactly the same thing as easy or normal mode, or standard, I think it's called, not normal. But there can be influences. So I've noticed that if you put a board in map set 1, the Slurpodrome prize values are going to be determined by that instead of whether it's the board itself is easy or standard mode. And I don't know why that is. It's probably just an error they made in the coding, but it's something to keep in mind. For Custom Street World Tour, we didn't worry too much about it. We put standard mode boards in both map sets, but yeah, just something to keep in mind with how the game treats it and how it's organized. Zone is going to determine in the base game, it basically determined the tour the board was in. So you'd have like the Mario tour and the Dragon Quest tour and then the other tour. So 0 is Dragon Quest, 1 is Mario, and 2 is the third tour. I forget what it's called. All you need to know really is that Zone 0 comes first, Zone 1 comes second after that, and Zone 2 comes after that in the map order. And order itself is the order of the map in that particular zone. So 0 is the first one, then 1, then 2, then 3, and that can go up as high as you want, basically. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a standard mode, we'll go 100. So that's going to be the first board that appears on standard mode when you select that. So we're going to click import YAML, and then we're going to navigate to the board I made. So I'm going to navigate to my board. I'm going to grab that YAML. There we go. So Lucky Zone is there. And now we export to a WBFS or ISO. So I'm going to do that real quick. Also worth noting is you don't have to export as a WBFS or an ISO. You can also export as a folder. And you can actually open the main.dol in this folder and run it through Dolphin. So for example, if you're going to be doing minor adjustments to the game by replacing files and stuff, you don't have to re-export the ISO or WBFS every time. You can just edit the files in the exported folder from CSMM and run the main.dol through Dolphin, like instantly, without having to recompile everything. It's a real cool trick, and I think more people should check it out. So now we're just going to wait for this to finish compiling. So now we're just going to test to see if that all worked. So it should be the first board here. Yep, Lucky Zone, icon's fine. We're going to change the order of play to as picked and make everything a vacant plot. So I've got a gecko code that's going to make it so it's always my turn, always play one's turn. I've got another gecko code where if I hold down B, I roll an 8. Wait, hold on. How do I get this right? There we go. And yeah, the music's working fine. The volume sounds good, so that's what I wanted to see. Perfect. Couldn't have asked for a better venture card. So now I'm going to roll 8 again, and we're going to see what the game does. If the game stutters or crashes, we may have a problem. All good. So basically, like, this is a test we do to stress test boards for pathing issues. If your board has any like problems with the pathing, if you roll to land on a balloon port, then you're going to get some stuttering or crashes. Generally speaking, it's not a bad idea to test this on console too, because the Wii console can handle things a bit worse than an emulator can. So if you want to make sure that your board works good on a console, good to test it there as well. But yeah, I think from everything I can tell, all the preliminary testing, everything seems to be good. So I would personally recommend, if you want to make sure your board is up to snuff, we do recommend doing a full playthrough of a game on a board before going to upload it to the repo. Otherwise, you can just like put it through AIs and watch them play to see if there's any major issues. But yeah, players will be best if you want to check for like balancing issues. I think I'm pretty happy. So we're going to go through the process of uploading it now. Okay, so where do we go from here? We have this board. It all seems to be working good. Next step is we need to upload the music. So the first thing we're going to do is grab all the BRSTM files. In this case, we only have the one. Put it in a zip. We're going to call it lucky.music.zip. And we're going to upload this to Google Drive. Now that we have this uploaded to Google Drive, I'm just going to quickly click Get Link. This is my process. There might be a quick way, but this is how I do it. Open a new tab. Click download and grab this link. Grab load. Oh my god. Grab that link before it starts to download. Now, in case the file is too big, you may get a page saying that the file can't be scanned for antiviruses and downloaded, so it needs you to confirm that you're willing to download it. If you get that page, just copy the link and add and confirm equals 1, and that'll fix it up for you. And that should work fine with this too. There we go. Anyway, so that's all good. Now that we have this link, we go back to the YAML, and we're going to chuck that in this section we deleted. Oh, we lost it, but we're just going to make a new section. We'll go download. There we go. We can even remove the confirm equals 1 because we don't need it. So I'll save that. And so what's going to happen is we basically need 2 mirrors of the music. But what's going to happen is once you submit it to the repository, the moderator, probably me, will go over it and grab that file from the link provided, and we'll have it rehosted on our own server. So yeah, now we need to get to submitting it to the repo. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Fortune Street Modding GitHub page. We're going to go to fortunestreetmodding.github.io. Click that. And this is where all the maps go. What you want to do is you want to click this fork button here. And then we're going to create a fork for our own personal GitHub account. Click create fork there. And now we're on our own fork. You can see my username there. So it's the Sophilautia fork of the fortunestreetmodding.github.io repository. It's basically like a copy of it, and we can make changes on our copy and then request to have those changes uploaded to the main repository. So just before we finish up with having this pushed to the repository, we want to make sure the folder for the board is all cleaned up and doesn't have any files we don't want included in our upload. So we want to remove the background and the music, because the background is already hosted on the repository elsewhere. It's got a link to a remote download and everything, so that's already on the system, so we don't need that. So remove those files, remove those, and then we also want to remove the music because that's hosted on Google Drive, the link we just uploaded. So I'll get rid of those. So now all we're left with is the YAML, the screenshot, the icon, and the FRB files. So now we're going to grab this, and we're going to chuck it on GitHub. So on our little fork here, we're just going to drag the lucky folder here. Now it's going to upload. We're going to make a name for the commit. So we'll do new map lucky zone. And I'll say created this to show others how to create and upload boards. And we're going to commit changes to the master branch. Let's see. And so here it's going to say this branch is one commit ahead of Fortune Street Modding Master. So now we're going to open a pull request here. And so this is going from the head repository, Sophilautia, Fortune Street Modding.github.io master. Yep. And it's going to the base repository, Fortune Street Modding /Fortune Street Modding.github.io. Able to merge. And see, it's got all our files here that we are adding. The WebP and the FRB. And we're going to click create pull request. You can change the description here if you want. And we're done, baby. Basically, the only other thing to mention is that you may get some feedback from the moderator as for changes that need to be made to the board. So yeah, just keep an eye on this pull request and have a discussion with the moderator, and they'll be able to help you out. And if everything is good, this will be merged with the main branch and you'll be able to see your board on the repo with all the others. And if you're lucky, we might even be able to have your board included in the Custom Street World Tour's next release, whenever that is. Probably in a few months. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. Hopefully I covered just about everything people need to know. If you have any more questions, you can reach out to me or anybody else on the Discord. I'll have a link in the description. And yeah, hopefully this can start getting some people inspired to start making some new boards for the community. So thanks once again, and we'll see you around. Happy board making.